This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Okay. You're all situated and ready to go?
I think so.
Good. Well, hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going. Welcome to episode 66 of Death by Southwest.
Whoa.
If you did not listen to the bonus episode yesterday, then I will say that I have not had a chance to see Jenna this week. So Mark was lovely enough to fill in and do this after he worked a whole day of work.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining me.
So there's this new film that I'm in I'd like to plug on the show.
I wish. That would be cool if you were in a new film. I don't have a description of our episode today. I didn't write one. So, and
what?
We're
just going in blind?
Yeah, we're just going in blind.
I like this. It's like, you know, when you were like, I want to watch this trailer and then we'll watch the show. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
I love seeing a show or a movie that I just go in blind. I haven't seen the
You don't
trailer.
know what it's about.
Especially because you know me, I can tell what's gonna happen. So like if I see the trailer, like I can already I'm right.
Oh, you can write the whole damn movie?
I'm right at the end of the movie. You know? I'm all, let me guess. This guy gets killed. That person survives. They fall in love. There's a car chase, and I know how it ends because it starts to flip and turn over. So I know it doesn't land on its tires. So we know how that scene ends.
Oh my God, your brain is working too fast for me today. Also, it is annoyingly true how good you are at predicting what's going to happen in movies and TV shows when I've already seen it and I still can't. And I'm like, I can't really remember what happens. And you're like, well, I bet this is what happens. And then that's what happens.
Yeah, it's funny about movies. I was thinking about this the other day and I didn't get to bring it up. But remember Blockbuster going to rent movies and
yeah, I loved it.
You know, there's a fee for rewinding the movie.
Yeah, be kind, rewind.
I know, but remember it was it's like you went in there and it's like they're like they open it up and like, oh shit. And they have to go back in the back room. There's this machine that costs $70 million. They just throw it and it's all psst. They're all done. It's $4.
I don't remember that at all.
You don't remember
no,
that?
I mean, I remember the saying be kind, rewind, that you're supposed to rewind, but I don't think I ever returned one because I would just drop it in the slot, you know? I never went in and handed it to them.
I know, but usually I drop it in the slot too. But I remember one time I was gonna rent another movie, so I drop it and they're like, they're all, it's not around. And I was like, oh, what happens now? And they just
we arrest you.
She literally turned around, put it into just a rewinder, and she was all, close it, it's all, psst, and it popped out, and she put it back in the case. And I was like, so that cost me $4?
Yeah, well, apparently
Blockbuster did go out of business.
I was gonna say apparently the $4 really didn't make it for them because they went out of business.
There's a lot of people with bad credit back in the day from Blockbuster.
I remember. I do know that. Our story today does not have anything to do with Blockbuster, and this episode is not sponsored by Blockbuster.
They're out of business, so if they were, I mean,
well,
shout out to you, Blockbuster. You know, I love going to Blockbuster. It's movie night.
Okay, so we're gonna go blind into this, and actually, I'm just gonna tell you very, super briefly about where it takes place because we have not had one in this location yet. But we have gotten a lot of, not a lot, but all the reviews that we've gotten on Apple, which we don't get very many anymore, have been get to the story, which I thought we were. But in the most recent episode, I think me and Jenna did talk for 10 minutes about something in the beginning of the Tuesday episode. Mm-hmm. And people just really don't like it. So we're just going to jump right in. I'm not going to tell you too much about the location because...
Do I get to know the actual location?
Yeah,
or I'm just guessing?
It's in Portland, Texas.
Portland, Texas?
Uh-huh. It's situated on the banks of Corpus Christi Bay. It's in the southern part of the state. It is part of the Coastal Bend region, known for its proximity to the Gulf of Mexico. So it has a population of 16,000 people.
Whoa, so it's small?
It's pretty small, but it has a steady growth due to its appealing coastal location and proximity to larger metropolitan areas. Yeah, it's pretty small.
That seems weird that coast on the Gulf of Mexico, you know what I mean?
In Texas, though? Yeah.
Yeah, the Gulf, it seems coastal cities, in America, they're pretty much overrun with population.
Yeah. Well.
Muy interesante.
Yeah, I guess this place is not yet. It
I heard
looks
it's growing-
really, really cute, though.
I heard it's growing strong though. 16,001 person now. It's gonna be 2 tomorrow.
Yeah,
Someone's having a baby.
it looks really nice, and it is. I'm looking at here. Yeah, it's right in the Gulf of Mexico. It looks quite lovely.
Can you imagine if they did the population of the city of active adults? Do you think that it's like all the kids and everything? Like when they say it?
Yes. What do you think? Like the kids are excluded from the population of a city?
Well, I mean, if you're not like driving a car, you're not really part of the population. You're not like jamming
you're a
up in
human
traffic.
who's alive.
Yeah, but you're not like.
You're not contributing to the community. Really.
Well, I'm not saying not contributing. I'm just saying like, I don't have to like deal with you in a grocery store. It's not like you're checking out too, and I'm like,
unless
whoa.
you're running around screaming because you want candy and
Yeah,
your
but they're
parents
not.
don't know where to be found.
But they're not like, in the register. They're not buying lottery tickets. You know?
Right. Yeah, I still think they're considered part of the population. I don't know though. That's an interesting question that I've never thought of. So I'll look into it.
And plus, like when you roll up to the
Remember
signs,
that.
like that sign looks pretty faded to me. Like when's the last time you updated that shit? You know, like it's actually 60,000 people, but we just like we don't.
Yeah, but I didn't take the population
I
from like
know.
an image with this picture on it.
know.
I asked ChatGPT, obviously.
No shit.
So it's a really popular place for outside activities. There's lots of bird watching that goes on here. Lots of cattle or
Yeah, who else are you gonna watch? There's
rodeos.
60,000 people there.
Rodeo stuff.
The rodeo.
Yeah, lots of farmers markets. There's fishing because they're right there in the bay. Look it up, guys. It's people really dislike when I talk too long about a place, so I'm not going to. But I found it to be quite quaint. It has like some Southwest vibes, but also some Florida vibes, and I love Florida.
Like alligators?
No, no, like Gulf of Mexico, Florida.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. So I'm just gonna keep it short and concise.
Apparently,
Okay?
people get killed there.
Yeah, well, they don't. That's why this is an interesting one, and was like pretty big media coverage on this because people like really don't get killed there, like not often at all. Crime is quite low, and it's like small town community vibes. One person I saw in an interview said like we're a small town, simple values. We value friendship, family, and community, and we're known for roping and riding.
And we like watching birds.
And they like watching birds. Yeah.
Probably not that great. No one's going there.
Well, maybe we'll go there.
Well, I don't want to get murdered.
Okay. Our story takes place in 2012. And I'm going to tell you about our two main people. Molly, her name is spelled Olgin, but I heard it pronounced Olgin, which sounds wrong now that I say it. We're just going to say Molly. Molly was 19
Molly
years
O.
Molly O. Molly is 19 years old. Very funny, had a real quirky sense of humor, sarcasm. She was also very smart. She didn't even have to try in school, and she got really good grades. Played drums in the high school band. But her favorite activity was driving in her car and singing. And
Was she a barrel racer?
No, she was not.
I mean, it's like rodeo shit.
Yeah, but she played. Oh, you were guessing what her favorite activity was.
Yeah.
No, her favorite activity was she loved just driving around town and singing at the top of her lungs. And for no reason, I heard her friend tell this story. For no reason, she decided she was going to name her car. And she was like, I'm going to name my car Jabbar. And she's like, and now I'm going to call my car Jabbar Makar. Which is kind of funny. She had lots of friends. She's very popular. She had a sister that she was 2 years apart. She was very competitive with. And
Older or younger? Do you know?
I put older. I want to say that I put older and then was like, nope, that's wrong. It's younger. So
Doesn't matter. Competitive scissors.
yeah. And our other main person today is Christine Chapa. And she is 18 years old. And she was kind of the newest addition to this big group of friends that Molly O had. They met at the mall and they instantly clicked because they both had very quirky, kind of sarcastic senses of humor. Christine lived in a nearby town called Sinton, but she was had gotten known throughout the entire area because she was like a softball superstar. She was super, super good at softball. And so she was becoming well known. They had Molly O and Christine just had a great time together. Very kind of like clean fun though. They never drank. They weren't like party kids. They were popular, but one of them said we hung out at Taco Bell, coffee shops, and the local parks. There's a lot of local parks.
There's a Taco Bell everywhere.
That's true.
And there's a Taco Bell in California. You can get booze.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
it's
weird.
Where is it at? It's up San Francisco kind of area, whatever. But you can like go there and like get a beer or a cocktail and eat tacos. It's right on the beach, and there's nothing else there because it was built so long ago. Now you can't build on that beach.
Huh.
But it's just like literally there's like beach, and then there's a Taco Bell. All the surfers go there. Everybody goes there, and you can buy booze
Cool.
and get a taco or a gordito.
Gordita.
Anyways,
You're making me hungry.
Yum.
Okay, so on June 23rd, 2012, Christine and Molly O were hanging out. They called their mutual friend, Brittany Selby, to see if she wanted to go to Violet Andrews State Park with them. They were originally planning to go to a movie, but they missed the movie, and so they were like, let's just go to the park.
Was this a matinee show?
No, it was nighttime.
Oh.
But Brittany had a volleyball game the next day. She was like, I can't go. Thanks, guys. She declined their invite. And that is a decision that still haunts her to this day.
Well, we know she didn't get killed.
We do know that. So the next morning, Chris and Stan Seymour, a pair of bird watchers, were strolling through Violet Andrews State Park. And they were confused because they're like, it's really quiet. Like, there's usually a lot of birds here. There was no birds. It was just very still and eerie
Birds
and
sense
quiet.
death, you know that.
And so they couldn't figure it out, but then they stumbled upon a very horrific scene. They were standing kind of on this like wooden overlook, you know, because it's like tall grass. It's a park, but there's places to stand to like look out. You know, it's kind of hilly.
Okay.
I'll have to post a picture. So they were standing on this overlook when they saw two bodies laying face down with their hands tied behind their back with duct tape in this beach grass. And Stan said it looked like, and this is a direct quote, looked like they had been molested or mauled. There was blood everywhere. Their clothes were kind of ripped off. So Stan and Chris called the police, called 911, and the police arrived on this gruesome scene. And upon closer examination, saw that like most of their clothes had been ripped off. There was duct tape around their wrists, on their mouths, and covering their eyes, and there was blood just everywhere, all over all this tall grass. So police could see that both women had been shot in the back of the head, But they thought, we have to confirm that they're dead. So they went to check vitals on the first girl who was declared dead on the scene. And then as they went to check vitals on the second girl, she moved. She sat up, actually.
What the?
So she was alive, but barely. And they obviously rushed her to the hospital. Nearby, in the parking lot nearby, there was just one car there, and they ran the plates, found out it was registered to Molly O, who lived about 6 miles away. And around this same time, Grace, Christine's mother, had been calling Christine all night, like, where are you? Why are you not home? It wasn't like her to stay out all night. And finally, Grace called the police, and the police said, your daughter's been involved in an accident, and they don't know who's alive or who's dead at this point. And the officer wouldn't say much else except for that, Grace, you need to get to Memorial Hospital immediately. So after arriving at the hospital, she learned that the girls had been shot, but one of them had not made it, and one of them was still alive. And they needed someone to go upstairs to where Christine was to identify, like, is it Christine or is it Molly? Mm-hmm. And Christine's mom was like beside herself. She was like, I can't do it. So she sent her eldest daughter up, and was relieved to find out that, yes, it was Christine, but they didn't know if she would survive. The bullet entered on the right side of her head near her ear and shattered upon entering her head, which destroyed quite a bit of brain tissue. She went pretty immediately into a very lengthy surgery, and the doctors decided it was safer to not retrieve the bullet fragments, like to not try and get all the bullet fragments out. And so it was touch and go. they didn't know if she would pull through this at all. I mean, she was shot at close range in the back of the head.
That's pretty awful.
Pretty crazy that she even survived at all. Whether she survives
at all, but the fact that she was still alive.
Right, exactly. So at the scene, detectives are poring over the scene, looking for any evidence. They located a spent casing for a .45 automatic handgun.
Ooh, that's a brutal one to get shot in the back of the head with.
Yeah. And because Molly had been shot so specifically, like right directly through her brainstem, one of the detectives said it's such a precise like aim that maybe this person might have military training, was kind of what they were thinking. They also found some cigarette butts, but neither girl smoked cigarettes, so they were hopeful that the cigarette butts would have DNA and maybe lead them somewhere. They also found an empty Monster energy drink. And the area, it was right there on the water, so the area got a heavy sea breeze. So any type of debris or trash that was usually left, within 24 hours, it would kind of blow away. So the fact that these cigarette butts and this empty energy drink were sitting there, it told them that this must be from some, they don't know if it's from the suspect, whoever the suspect is, but
the unsub,
that's right. But they suspect that it is from the suspect. Nothing appeared to be missing from Molly's car, so they kind of quickly ruled out that it wasn't a robbery, right? But the girl's clothing was so ripped and messed up that it likely indicated sexual assault, and so they were hoping to also find DNA from either girl's body. They asked the ME to test Molly and the hospital to run a rape kit on Christine. And after the rape kit was done on Christine and the medical examiner examined Molly, both girls did show physical signs of being raped, but there was no DNA evidence left behind, which meant that he probably wore a condom. So, police are like, okay, we have, at this point, no DNA. They haven't gotten the DNA back from the cigarette butts or the can of Monster energy drink yet, but there's no DNA on the girls' bodies. And they have really little to go on. So they start by talking to the families, asking if the girls have any enemies, do they have problems with anyone recently? And it was just like across the board, no. Like they had no enemies. They were so well liked, both of them. And so at this point, detectives are thinking, well, it kind of seems like a random act of violence, which me and Jenna talked about in a recent episode is really rare, actually. Like, it's a lot more rare than people think. Seeing it on TV and stuff, it makes it seem like you could just be raped and murdered walking at night by yourself anywhere.
Yeah, but a lot of like crimes like this, like you're talking about, it's like usually someone they know, someone hates them or something.
Right, exactly.
But also, it's a weird thing that like a detective's like, so do they have any enemies? It's like, do most people have like an arch enemy, like or someone
somebody who's like
if like
they're having an issue
recent
with
breakup or something like that.
A recent breakup or a recent
But
argument.
most of the time, it's like kind of weird. It's like okay,
right, like
the guy
somebody
fries doesn't like me.
Are they having a problem? The guy fries doesn't like
everybody likes me, so it's fine.
That's so true. So they moved on from the families because the families really didn't have anything helpful. They went on to talk to all of their friends. Again, the friends really have no helpful leads. Like they're like, no, they haven't had any recent fights or arguments or anything. Like really get along with everyone. But one friend did go up to the detective after he was questioning her and said, I don't know if this is useful or necessary information. Christine and Molly weren't just friends. They were actually dating.
Whoa.
And so immediately the question is raised in the detective's mind, like, could this be a hate crime? Because there doesn't seem to be anything, we're in a small town in Texas. Yeah. This was, 12 years ago. And there doesn't seem to be anything else that would like be a motive for these two girls to be killed so violently.
And there's also like, I imagine there's some tourism there, but there's not like, it's like New York City could be anybody.
Right.
But like here, it's like,
it's small
okay,
town.
it's like
Everybody
one
knows
way in,
everybody.
one way out. It's like, what's going on?
And so Molly and Christine hadn't really told anybody. Some of their friends knew, but they hadn't told their families. They were not sure how it would be, accepted. But for whatever reason, in the end, authorities didn't end up investigating. They had an open mind that it could be a hate crime, but they weren't.
It wasn't really leading that direction.
It wasn't leading anywhere, although it did happen during Pride weekend. I found that out like at the very end of my research, so it feels a little out of place to say that there, but it's an important note, perhaps. So the news
perhaps
picked this story up within a few hours, and several people had been apparently near the park at the time of the murders. They didn't actually see anything, like they didn't see the girls get murdered, but
they could have seen something.
They could have seen something. So this being on the story being on the news, they got people calling in saying, "I saw this, I heard this, whatnot." There was only really one call that seemed to offer up anything that might be useful. And it was a caller who said he lived near the park and that he saw a white sedan in the parking lot, but then he saw it speed away when he was like driving home.
Did he know what
that
kind of
night.
sedan it was?
He didn't.
So you know what? I'd be such a good witness.
I know.
They're like, what kind? It was a 1970 or it was 1996 like Honda Accord, and I know it was an SI because of this package. They'd be like, that's pretty helpful. Yeah.
Yes, I know. You are very good at recognizing cars, and you're pretty observant about the things around you. And apparently so was this guy, because he called and he didn't know the make, but
Still super helpful.
it's still
White
super helpful.
sedan,
That's kind of the first lead they have. So meanwhile, at the hospital, Christine has woken up. It's been a couple days. She has woken up and she was very scared that the person would try to come back and finish the job.
So she's like aware? She's not like brain damaged person?
She is, yes, she's conscious. She's not quite able to talk, but the detectives are asking her questions and she can write down like yes or no and write a little bit on a pad of paper.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. So she did not know her attacker. They were able to narrow down what the suspect looked like by saying like, is he white? And she could write yes or no. So process of elimination, they got that it's a white male in his 20s with dark hair and a slim build. He kind of smelled like cigarettes.
And Monster.
And Monster drink. And she did not know him. And so another week or two goes by, and Christine's memory is now really improving, and so is her condition. She's still in the hospital, still unable to walk.
She got shot in the back of the head and is alive.
Mm-hmm. And she's
So
actually
weird.
able to kind of talk a little bit now. And this is really, really sad, but she's asking like, when can I see Molly?
Wow.
Like, when can I see Molly? Because they didn't, for the first few weeks, they didn't want to tell her that because they were afraid it might negatively impact
you don't
her.
Need to deal with that,
right,
exactly.
her recovery. But they had to break it to her. She was very upset, but she was now more determined than ever to not only get better, but to help the
Find
authorities.
This slim-billed bastard.
Exactly. And so she was able to kind of really take detectives through that night and provide a more detailed description of the shooter. She could describe his face a bit more. She remembered that he was about the same height as her and Molly, so under 6 feet. And then she took the police officers through the night. She said that her and Molly, who had been dating for about 6 months at this point, were supposed to see the movie. They got a late start. They missed the movie, so they decided to go for a drive. And Molly actually wanted to take Christine to the place where she had been baptized, a beautiful place down by the beach. So they went. They were standing on the overlook type thing, and Christine felt a little bit nervous. It was kind of feeling a little bit creepy. It was late at night. It was like around 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night. And she was like, I think we should maybe go. Molly said, let's just stay for a few more minutes. And what really creeped her out was that they're standing here looking out this way. And I know nobody listening can see my hands, but
to the left.
Yeah, they're looking out to the left, and then kind of behind them, they notice a man, not so close that it's weird, but close enough they can see him, like quickly walking this way. And Christine said, maybe I kind of remember seeing him putting on gloves and thinking that was weird, but I'm not totally sure. I mean, again, it's only been a few weeks since she was shot in the head.
Yeah.
But she said
she definitely sensed something weird.
She sensed something weird, and then they kind of turned back around, and then before they knew it, she said it all happened so fast. There was a man standing there pointing a gun at them, and he had like a stocking over his face, like a pantyhose, dressed in all black gloves on. And she remembered specifically they were black Under Armour baseball gloves because she was a baseball player or a softball player. So she like really recognized that.
We're in that situation like that. You will observe shit like that. It's
yeah.
like, well,
And that you can even remember it after being
shot in the head.
Right. After such trauma. He's referring to them as girl 1 and girl 2. And he forces them to go walk down the steep kind of embankment next to the overlook where they were looking. And he wants them to go underneath the overlook. He starts making comments about having sex with each of them. He then asked for their driver's license. And Christine said, "Are you taking us somewhere?" He said, "No, but I am going to sexually assault you." And he said, he threw duct tape at Christine and said, "I want you to duct tape each other's wrists, put it over your eyes and mouth."
I know you hate this, but I'd be like, no fucking way. You got to shoot me right now, motherfucker. You know what I mean?
You don't, first of all, I know you say that. I don't think that you could know how you would act in that situation. And I think that you're a man. You are physically bigger. You would probably be a much better match for this person.
Yeah, but if he has
a gun,
like 45, I'm like kind of fucked.
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, you're going to have to drag my body. That's my whole opinion, though. It's like, I'm going to go dead weight on your ass. I'm not going to help you out. I'm not going to dig my own grave. It's my whole opinion.
I know, but you're going to get a lot of backlash for that because you can't really blame or like shame the victim for how they acted in that situation.
I'm not saying that. It's just like what I say, but I understand. Like, it's trauma. Like, I get it.
Yeah,
it's always survival instinct. That's what everybody does. You know?
Right. They want to they don't know that he's going to kill them. He just said he's going to rape them. So I'm assuming thinking, okay, let's follow his instructions and maybe he'll just like rape us and leave.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
I'm sorry, I was wrong.
It's okay. So Christine put duct tape around Molly's wrists, over her eyes, on her mouth, and then also put it over her own face. He sexually assaulted Christine and then moved on to Molly. Both of the girls were crying. And then Christine hears a gunshot and her ears started to ring. And she said she never heard the second gunshot, which
Obviously.
is because it was shot into her head. She said, quote, "I blacked out for a bit. I don't know how long, but I did wake up in the middle of the night. I knew something was wrong right away. My left side felt funny and I just kept fighting. I tried to get up and get help, but I couldn't. I kept falling back down." Oh, just can't believe. I can't.
Unbelievable.
It's really unbelievable. So not only was there this good news that Christine was awake and able to kind of recount a bit more about the entire night, but
quite a bit more.
Quite a bit more, yeah. But police also got their first big break in the results of the DNA that came back from the cigarette butts and the monster can. There was a match in the criminal database. And it was 21-year-old Dylan Spellman. He lived nearby and he had a pending an armed robbery charge in Nevada for a home invasion. He held with several other men a family hostage before robbing them and then taking off. And when they saw where he lived, they were like, oh, well, this all makes sense because he was a half a mile. It was a straight line, they said, from where the girls were found to Dylan's house, a half a mile, like straight line.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they started looking into the file for Dylan's upcoming trial for robbery, like all the evidence that had been collected up until this point. And there was something that really struck them. So they did not they kept it out of the media that the killer, the attacker, referred to Molly and Christine as number 1 and number 2. That was never public knowledge. No one ever knew about that. But what they saw in Dylan's file was that in that home invasion, a note that the homeowners said was that Dylan and the other robbers didn't refer to each other by name. They referred to each other by numbers. So Dylan robbed that home with several other dudes. And he'd be like, number 2, you go over there. Number 3, you go this way. Like he wouldn't refer to them by names. And
it's like Reservoir Dogs, where it's Mr. Pink, Mr. White.
Right. And that's That's a pretty specific thing to do. So the fact that he did this at a previous crime,
Yeah, it's kind of
it's
like,
kind of
hey,
like,
what's up?
okay. But that wasn't all. In addition to that, which seemed like a pretty like damning fact to find out, like really, it's circumstantial, but
Let's go get Dylan.
Right. But they also found out that Dylan was no stranger to all the kind of state parks and local parks in the area, especially Violet Andrews State Park, where the girls were found. About a month before the attack on Molly and Christine, police discovered Dylan in that same park, intoxicated and passed out on one of the overlooks with a woman who was half naked. Ultimately, police determined that like they were both there willingly. He hadn't like dragged her there or anything. They were drunk. Let him off with like a warning, no arrests. But this is enough for police to be like, we want to talk to this guy.
Yeah, no shit.
Right. So Dylan agrees to meet with police, and he comes in, talk to them, and agrees to a polygraph. He says on the polygraph, they ask if he was at the park that night, and he says, no, I was not at the park that night. But his cigarette butts were found there, so they know he's lying. He ultimately failed the polygraph test. When he failed the test, it was just it's not the detectives testing him, it's the polygraph tester.
The official name of that person.
Right. So when he finished answering questions, which apparently he got, I don't know what constitutes failing a polygraph, if it's like all of them are wrong or some of them are wrong. I'd imagine at least some of them are wrong constitutes failing. So when the polygraph giver finished, Dylan said, I'd like to speak to detectives. The polygraph guy was like, okay, brought the detectives in and still denied everything to the detectives. But then he said, if I did admit to it, how much time would I get? They were like, well, I don't know. We'll go to the DA. We'll find out. We'll let you know.
Jesus.
So police go meet with the DA to see if there's enough evidence to prosecute him. But without a confession, and Christine couldn't identify him, from a picture lineup, couldn't identify him. All they have is the cigarette butts.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
But there's no way to know the cigarette butts were from that night. Yeah, they were pretty recent.
Yeah, it
they
could have been a day earlier.
Exactly.
Or hours earlier before it occurred.
Exactly. They examined his cell phone records, turned up nothing. There was nothing. And I don't know what that means, because I would think that would be a definitive, yes, he was in that area, or no, he wasn't. But all that detective said is that it didn't turn up anything.
You don't always
condemning.
ping if you're not
I guess
cell
that's
phone's
true.
different. Like in 2012, there's a lot less apps that are
tracking your locations.
like every
you're right.
app, like Walmart app. It's like any app. It's like
knows exactly where you are now.
like construction calculator app. I looked at. It's all. Will you allow your location? I'm like, why?
Right.
I'm just trying to inches to tenths. You
Right.
know, like what's going on here?
So you're right. Back then, it was more like the cell towers that you're pinging off of. So that's apparently why. But either way, the cell phone information from Dylan turned up nothing. So, and then the other thing was that Dylan was really tall. He was well over 6 feet tall. And Christine said that the guy, she believed he was like about their height, which was well under 6 feet tall.
Well, that's kind of substantial because like a tall person,
Yeah, is noticeable. Someone
like
who's
well
me,
over 6 feet tall. Like me and Michael are like an inch or
average
two apart.
Height.
But an inch or two apart, basically,
Right. I couldn't tell who was
that would
taller.
be difficult, but it's like, if you're 6'3" or 5'9",
right.
there's a huge difference in towering over you.
So all of that, this conclusively this meant the DA was like, you don't have enough. You need more.
That must
find more evidence.
Off.
Sure did. So they went back to the crime scene again. They were like turning over rocks. I mean, they were looking for anything that might be more concrete linking this to Dylan. And they came up empty-handed. Nothing. So Dylan kind of like fell down their list of suspects. They didn't really have a list of suspects, but he was
well, he's eliminated.
He's kind of eliminated at this point.
I take it he didn't drive a white sedan.
He did not.
Okay.
And in months go by, and then more months go by, and the case kind of almost comes to a complete stop.
But Christine is doing better.
So during this time, Christine is making incredible progress. She actually is able to walk again. She had to relearn how to walk, talk, and even smile after the attack.
Jesus.
Yeah.
What a dope ass woman.
Right? I mean, to power through that is I can't even begin to imagine losing your girlfriend
and getting shot in the back of the head
and being raped and shot in the back of the head. I mean, it's just incredible. Unfortunately, another year went by. And the case is now completely dead. It's like cold. It's not considered cold yet, but it's not
chilly,
going anywhere. It's chilly. And detectives are so frustrated. And now that Christine can like walk and everything, they decide we're going to go from the beginning. We're going to start over. Like we're going to go through this, every single document, every piece of evidence. They take Christine back to the park and ask her to kind of walk them through the entire night. I know.
Pretty awful.
Yeah.
But she seems like a very determined person. She's like, let's fucking do this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, even going back through every single thing, every piece of evidence, taking Christine there and making her talk them through it again, nothing. They were so stumped. Until an unexpected break in the case occurred in the form of a letter. So detectives get a phone call from a neighboring police department, in Sinton. That's a really hard thing to say. In Sinton is the town.
But isn't that where, what's his name? The other friend is from?
That's where Christine is from.
Okay.
Sinton. And so a letter was dropped off, and they called the Portland police and said a letter was dropped off, and it relates to your case from a couple of years ago, I think. So detectives go to retrieve the evidence. It's addressed to Christine's father. It actually says on the front, I saw a picture of it. It says on the front, "For the eyes of Mr. Chapa only, important details inside." And it was hand delivered in a Ziploc bag. So I think what happened is it was left at Christine's parents' house, and then Christine's dad put it in a Ziploc bag and brought it into the police. So the letter appeared to be from a hitman that was allegedly hired to kill Christine. Basically, he was hired because the killer realized that he didn't kill both girls. He only killed one. And so he hired a hitman to finish the job. And this hitman is writing a letter and says, like, basically, look, I was hired to finish you off, but I'm not going to do that. And instead, I'm going to tell you who the killer is so that you can take care of it. Or you can take care of it for your daughter, because this was to her dad.
He's like a sweet hitman?
Yeah, I guess so. He's just like giving out, gifts in the form of, here's the person who tried to kill your daughter. And in the letter, there were things that were described that really no one else could have known. Again, the girl 1 and girl 2, and the fact that the killer asked the girls to duct tape each other up, and he didn't do it. I'm not sure how that worked into the letter, but it was in there.
Interesting.
In the letter, he also calls the girls.
You got me really thinking this is a hard one for me.
In the letter, he also calls the girls fucking lesbians. And so he didn't outright say that they were attacked because they were gay, but police thought that this could be kind of insinuated from this, the way that he talked about them. Perhaps he had a problem with the fact that they were gay. So police take this letter to show Christine and the rest of her family. And in the letter, it was kind of implied that, like, I was hired to finish the job, and, like, I'm not going to do it. But police are like, well, we don't know if he's not going to do it. So you're in danger, basically, is what they tell Christine.
Freaky.
Like, there's still somebody out there. There's an implied threat to your life. So,
or even the original guy.
Right.
You know?
So, like, please go stay at a hotel. We're going to, like, get you some protection. And at the end of the letter, the hitman who wrote the letter identifies who hired him. And he says, Cristobal Melchor, an Army reservist from Utah. And the hitman even included a photo of Cristobal.
What?
Yep. Police are like, who is Cristobal Melchor? Like, they look him up. He has no seeming ties to the area at all. Christine's family has never heard of him. Police have never heard this name in 2 years of investigating this. So police are like, who is this person? And why would he want to kill 2 random teenagers? No, they're going to find out. So they go to Utah. They find Cristobal. And they ask him about the girls, a hitman,
All the things.
Portland, Texas.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. They show him this letter. And they said he appeared to be like genuinely shocked and confused. He couldn't understand why someone would accuse him of this. But then they showed him the photo. And he said, I know that photo. But I wasn't the only one in that photo. Like, there was another person with me. Somebody cut that photo in half. I remember that photo. It was with my former roommate, David Strickland. He is cropped out of that photo, and his wife took that photo. We were having like a barbecue. Like, he remembered it very clearly. He could remember where that was from. And he explained to police, he said, he was a roommate of mine. We lived together for a few months, but then we had a falling out. And I got home from work one day and found that David had just left and moved out, and he stole a bunch of my guns.
Oh, shit.
And so Cristobal reported the robbery to police at the time. And police actually caught David in Moab, Utah. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, Moab.
Moab, Utah, apparently heading to Texas. He was brought back to Utah and arrested. They found all of Cristobal's guns and also a backpack of David's things. Cristobal decided to press charges, but David made bail and returned to his hometown of Portland, Texas.
What?
To stay with family until his trial. Detectives were kind of like, okay, this like feels plausible. This seems kind of like this could be real.
It's kind of working out.
Yeah, but okay, we still need to know where you were, Cristobal, like on the night of the murder.
Kind of makes sense.
And he had a rock solid alibi. He was on a training exercise at Fort Hunter Liggett, California.
So it's like everybody and their mother knows he was there.
Right, he was there. Like, they can prove it 1,000 times over.
So he's not an unsub.
He is no longer considered an unsub. He's cleared of it. So why did somebody write this letter claiming that Christopher was the killer and send it to Christine's father? Detectives at this point, now that they know that Cristobal's not it, Dylan has been, cleared like years ago. They're like, okay, well, we think it's probably David Strickland then. And this letter was just like a red herring. He's just trying to throw us off. David Strickland obviously had ties to the area. He's living there right now with his family. And when they began to look deeper into him, they realized that a David had called and told them about the white sedan.
Oh, shit.
So they were like, okay, so this guy is just trying to like throw us off course from the beginning.
Well, he found out that like there was they said that there was a survivor, so he immediately is like, oh, what's up?
Right.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would think like, yeah, that's what police think at this point. So they find that David's home is about a mile from where the attacks took place, and they go to talk to him. They knock on the door and they're like, hi, we're here to talk to you about recent murder in the area. Are you home alone? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm home alone. My wife is out running errands. He's like, come on in. And they notice pretty quickly as they're walking in behind him that he's pretty short. Probably the same height as Christine and Molly.
Interesting.
And so they said, have you always lived in town? He said, well, when I was younger, I grew up here. I wanted to get out of Texas, so I joined the military. But structure like that, a structured life like that just wasn't for me. So I left, and then I kind of bounced around a little bit. Detectives are listening to him. They've already completely done their research, so they know he's lying.
Yeah, he's not in the military. Know that.
Yeah.
Shit.
Well, they know that he had been in the military. That part is true. but he was released for psychological reasons. And he's now working for his family business. His family owns a pharmacy in town. So they ask, do you know a Cristobal Melchor? He says, oh, yeah, I lived with him and his family for a bit in Utah. And they said, okay, well, have you ever been arrested? He said, yeah, but it was just a minor traffic thing. And they said, you've never been arrested for burglary in Utah or anything else? He says, gentlemen, I think it's time for you to go. I'm like, immediately.
He said, gentlemen?
Well, that's what, on
know.
what I was watching, that's what it said. So detectives are just like laser focused on him now.
No shit.
And at the time of the attack, David was living in Portland, Texas. He left Texas shortly after the attack and ended up in Utah living with Cristobal Melchor. And then about a year later, he was back in Texas awaiting trial for the robbery of Cristobal's weapons. Police also used cell phone records and GPS from his car, I suppose, to discover that his cell phone had been near the Chapa home when the letter was delivered.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then the Portland authorities go get the... Oh, man, I'm sorry. It just connected with me in my brain because how they said you've never been arrested for burglary in Utah. And I was like, did I get that wrong? Because it's Dylan who was arrested for robbery in Vegas. But then I remembered, no, David was also arrested for stealing the guns. Right. Yeah. That took me a minute there. So Texas authorities got with Utah authorities and were able to check out that backpack that had been confiscated at the time of David's arrest in Utah. And and it's in evidence. It's still in evidence, all of it. And so they went inside the backpack and they found personal lubricant, condoms, handcuffs, like flex handcuffs, mace, and a .45 caliber gun and a pair of black gloves by Under Armour.
What the fuck?
So detectives took the gun from the backpack and shot it, took the casings, sent it to the lab. Lab said they
matched up like crazy.
Mm-hmm. David Strickland was arrested and charged with capital murder, aggravated sexual assault, and aggravated assault. They seized his computer at this point, and they found a portion of that hitman letter on his computer.
Like a rough draft?
Well, it's actually really interesting. So he had deleted the letter off his computer, but before he deleted it, before he printed it out and then deleted it, he used like spell check. And apparently something in your computer's like deep data memory keeps track of any documents that you've spell checked, like those parts of the document. And so even though the letter in its entirety wasn't there, they could like piece together. Amazing.
You know what's crazy is like, you know, when like John Dillinger and shit was like robbing shit. It's like you just had to buy a faster car than the cops. You know what I mean? And like you were good. Like that was like
you can't get away with anything.
You know what's weird though is like since like Anthony Weiner and all these people, would you ever text or email anything if you're a sketchy person?
Okay,
like
I'm glad you added that because I was like, I mean, I've texted you things.
I know, but you're not gonna be under investigation, like
right. I guess I've
yeah,
not.
I mean,
yeah.
Who
if you're a public figure or whatever, or you're a murderer, or kidnapper,
you're not inappropriate. 10 years from now, there's gonna be some bro who like sent inappropriate pictures to somebody or said something.
I see what you mean. Like it's appropriate for me to send you something.
But you know, like a text message lasts forever. Like it's not.
I know.
It's always in the cloud.
I know. So. Yes, it is amazing. That little sidebar came from the fact that they were able to like find part of that hitman letter on his computer. But I understand that Christine was still alive, but 2 years had gone by at this point when he sends the letter.
If he hadn't sent the letter, he would have been fine.
Right. Like
dumbass.
Like after 2 years, they haven't caught up to you. She's been talking, walking, like completely functional for 2 years. Why would you suddenly now decide to send this letter?
Because
you would have gotten away with it. Move somewhere else.
But think about this: like he doesn't really know that.
He doesn't, and actually,
and that paranoia, like I
Yeah, it
imagine
can be
driving
intense.
crazy, you know.
And
also, it's great that it happened because he's a piece of shit.
well,
you know?
sure, but it is also possible that he just, they're like, I mean, look at Zodiac, who wrote into the newspaper all the
it's
time. Like, there are people who
I
like kind of
wanna
like
be
don't want to be caught, but like want to be able to like get some recognition for
Yeah.
something. So apparently when he was in custody before he made bail, I'm sorry, he never made bail. That was for his previous guns
the
thing.
other crime.
Yeah. So while he was just in custody, he agreed to be like interviewed again in a room, because before when they talked to him, it was in his home, remember? And so police said, like, I saw detectives interviewed about this. They said it was really weird. It was like it was a game. He was like so relaxed, and he was like, well, if you say I murdered them, then I guess I murdered her, then I guess I murdered her. And the next sentence he would smile and say, that's what you wanted me to say, right, boss? And they were like, it was odd. Like he would admit to it, but then he'd kind of make it sound like he's just saying what he wants to hear.
I'm saying this because that's what you want me to say.
Right. And they couldn't figure out, like, why did he do this, though? Like,
But
why?
what about the bro earlier, who the original suspect is like, well, what would that be if I was convicted of it?
Yeah,
that's a weird fucking question.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Well, keep that in your mind.
I am. It's always been in the back of my brain.
Because, so police still don't understand, like, why did David do this? He has, like, he doesn't have a violent past. I mean, yeah, he stole guns from his old roommate, but they had a falling out. Police assumed it was kind of just, he was just being a dick.
There's also
It's
another
a far
bro.
cry from stealing guns to
There's
like
also
raping and
another
murdering
bro
people.
who like robbed somebody. It's like
That's true.
This is like a
Odd, right?
This is like a community of just robbers.
I mean,
I can't wait.
So police still don't know why he did it. So they ask him, and because he hasn't like officially formally confessed still, and he says, "You guys are the cops. You figure it out." So he's not saying, no, I didn't do it, but he's not saying, yes, I did do it. Like, he's just a very,
all
very
the pieces
confusing.
are here. Why don't you figure it out?
Right. But even without a full confession, detectives, between
They have enough evidence.
They have enough. They've arrested him and charged him. Between that and Christine, what she's been able to tell them, they know that that Christine and Molly were like sharing this like intimate moment there. For whatever reason, David happened to walk by and it pissed him off, turned him on. I mean, who knows? But police believe that he just saw them as like easy prey, and then to rape and then killed them so that he couldn't be identified. He missed killing Christine by less than an inch. If it had been, slightly this way or that way. And they believe that it was because the first shot, like,
Jarred him.
Exactly. He was like a little bit like stars in his eyes or whatever. So at trial, he pleaded not guilty. And after 5 days of testimony from anybody involved in the case, Christine testified. She got up on the stand. And she said, the whole time I was looking at him because I wanted him to look at me. I wanted him to see like what he had done. And he refused. He would not look at her the whole time that she was on the stand. But when her family was on the stand, like her mom, her dad, whoever else, she said she watched him and he would look at them dead in the eye and like smirk. And like, it was almost like he was trying to like antagonize them. Like, what a psycho.
Yeah, what a piece of shit.
And how good for her that she got on the stand and looked him like dead in the eye, even though he wouldn't look at her. I mean, incredible. So it took 6 hours for the jury to reach a verdict. They found him guilty of capital murder and sexual assault, sentenced him to life in prison.
Good.
In 2018, advancements in testing technology enabled the DNA identification of a hair that was found on Christine's body.
I know it.
The hair matched Dylan Spellman, the initial suspect, who had recently pleaded guilty to his involvement in an armed robbery in Nevada. It was brought out in all of this with the Nevada robbery that he referred to his like co-robbers as 1 and 2. And so remember his DNA was on the cigarette butts and the energy drink. And he had also apparently been staying with his father's best friend. Remember, just a half a mile, like a straight shot. Apparently, after the fact, an eyewitness also came forward and said that they saw Dylan at the park, at Violet Andrews State Park, both before and after the crime. So David Strickland's attorneys immediately file a motion to overturn this based on the new DNA evidence. And his attorneys, I heard an interview with his attorneys, and I was like dead set that for sure it was David. 100%. He just sounds like a creep. He looks kind of like a creep. I don't know. I believed it. The evidence, he had the gun. He had a gun that matched. I mean, like, how do you deny that?
Seems kind of weird.
But then I watched David's attorneys give this interview, and they were like, what never makes it into news stories is that the police mishandled evidence. And the two people who were heading up the investigation in those initial 2 years or whatever, one had retired, but they kind of said it like he had been pushed out, and one had been let go due to leaking information about this case to someone who was not involved in the case. And they didn't really get into how the evidence was mishandled. Anyways, the detective who was let go, he said mistakes were made in that case. David's attorneys also said, yeah, he wrote the letter, fine, but he was just trying to get revenge on Cristobal. It didn't mean that like he did anything. And so the interviewer said, what about the gun, though? You kind of can't deny that. Yeah, and the defense, David's attorney said, we had our expert examine it and said it was inconclusive. Yeah, it could have been the same gun, but it could have been a different gun.
It wasn't definitive.
It wasn't a definitive, like, yes, for sure. But that's the defense's
This is a
expert.
good one.
But his attorney said the right guy was Dylan. The first guy, the first suspect, his DNA's all over the crime scene. He lives a half mile away from there. He's been at the park a bunch of times. Like, it's
monster drinks and cigarettes.
It's him. And he failed the polygraph, and he was kind of hinting around like, what would a plea bargain look like?
All weird things.
All weird things. And so I watched David's attorneys give this interview, and I was like, is it not him? Like, I don't know. But in 2020, his appeal was denied. And I believe he is still continuing to try and overturn his conviction, but so far has not.
But you think it's Dylan?
I don't know. I really don't. Like, I was very convinced it was David. I just was. From everything I researched, I watched 2 documentaries on this case. Everything that I read, it's just like, yeah, it's David. He's weird. He has this backpack filled with like lube and flexi handcuffs. He works at a pharmacy. Like, that's odd.
I mean, pharmacists work at a pharmacy. But, no.
I know, but like to be walking around with all that and the gun thing. But then it's really hard to deny, like, although this is my only thought, Dylan has been seen at that park a lot. He frequents the parks.
Maybe
sure, so he was there the day before, and he had a Monster Energy drink and smoked some cigarettes.
Yeah, but also like the guy wrote the letter. I'm just getting back. I mean, it's like getting back at somebody. It's not framing him for rape and murder.
That's what I was saying. Like, so no, I do think it was David. Like, Dylan's hair on on her body. I don't know. People shed hair all the time. He could have dropped a hair 3 hours earlier, and exactly where she was raped and killed, his hair floated up onto her. You know what I mean?
So what you're trying to say is you gave me one of those stories without a conclusion.
Well, the conclusion is that David did it. I mean, he's still in prison. His appeal was not accepted. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, if I was a juror, I'd have a hard time saying without a doubt. Like, there's no, what do they have to be able to say? Like there's no, without a doubt.
Yeah. Reasonable doubt.
Right, without reasonable doubt, exactly. But to end it on a positive note, Christine is, this was from 2 years ago, but she was taking college courses while also writing a book about her experience. She is engaged, and she is studying to become a speech therapist because speech therapy was like very important to her recovery.
That's pretty awesome that she got shot in the back of the head and all that shit happened and she like made it through.
She not only made it through, she's going to college, getting a degree to like help other people and writing a book about like how she survived this. And she said, I just really want to help others in any way that I'm able. She said, I struggle certainly with post-traumatic stress and anxiety. I definitely still have panic attacks, and my body will never be 100% again. I saw a video with her, and she walks with like a slight limp. She said, I miss being able to pick up my niece and nephews. Remember, she was an athlete too.
Yeah.
And she said, I would really like to have my complete independence back, but I'm alive and I just want to help others. Like, what an impressive woman. I don't know. You have to be really fucking emotionally strong to get through something like that. I don't know that I could do that. I think that would be...
You're a badass. You can handle it.
Thanks. I don't know. That's a lot of things all at once to deal with, and then to constantly deal with, because you kind of can't forget it. If you have trouble physically for the rest of your life, that's a constant reminder of it. So be tough, but I mean, amazing. I don't think we've ever had, no, that's not true. We've had one. I was going to say I had one where like it's about two people and one person dies and one person doesn't. We had one other, but I thought this was a...
You need to keep up on the story because I want to know the appeal process, anything that happens.
Yeah, I will look up. I'll set a Google alert for it. But yeah, I thought this was a good one and apt to do because it is Pride Month. So wherever Christine is and her fiance, maybe they're married by now. I hope she continues to do well, and I hope me and Jenna decided the most appropriate thing to say at the end of this, and I really do believe this is like, I hope I did this story justice. Like, Christine's alive. If she ever heard this, which I'm sure she would never, I would hope she would listen to it and feel like, okay, they told that story pretty well. Not like, ugh, fuck these people. And even the people who are not alive to listen, like, I think that's just a good goal to have in mind. Like, I hope that I told this story, like, I did it justice. I'm not going to overspeak it. I talk too much about everything. We're going to say goodnight.
Well, I think it's like crazy that just you doing the podcast and everything, there's always some other story. Stories in the news are a hype.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's a small town. And then like...
And they go away.
Right. I'm sure you hear about the story and then it just drifts away.
Right.
It's never a conclusion. But
yeah.
It is interesting. It's still sketchy with that dude.
Or no,
Smirking and whatnot.
I'm really interested to see what happens. Although I do think it was David. But at the end of the day, we're going to end it on a positive note by saying again what a badass Christine is. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.
And
I'm happy to be here as a guest.
I know you like doing this.
I do. That's Indiana whining in the background.
She's like, when are you guys going to be done? Any listener who's listened before is very familiar with Indiana's whining. So, but yeah, guys, thanks for listening. Leave us a review. Send us a voicemail, DM, email. All the ways to get in touch are in the show notes. And we will see you next week.
Good night and good luck.
There you go.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.